what you see on the bench is a small function generator, a little kit that I bought from eBay, and or actually I think it might have been Amazon. At any rate, it's one of these XR2206 function generator kits. They cost anywhere from $6 to $12 depending on the kit. There's also a similar kit that at least used to be sold by Jameco that I built a few years ago. But at any rate, it's a function generator that produces sine, square, and triangle waves. So why would I do that, given that I have function generators that are considerably more sophisticated than this, and so on? And the reason is that I'm looking for ways to perform some of the experiments that I have done using the analog discovery with some other instruments, perhaps considerably cheaper. Obviously, for $7, this is a good candidate for producing the triangle wave that I use to sweep the collector in the curve tracer, for example. Now, right now, I'm powering it off of this Siglet power supply. You see 8.99 volts, and it's drawing just under 20 milliamps. Notice that it swings back and forth between 0.01 and 0.02. And up on the oscilloscope is the waveform. I'll turn off some light here so you can see that a little better. The triangle wave. It's not a perfect triangle, but it's good enough for what I'm doing. And you may notice that I'm running it right at 50 hertz, which is the triangle frequency that I was using with the curve tracer, for example. Now this will go from considerably below that all the way up to near a megahertz. I'll talk about the 2206 here in a second, but one of the reasons that I want to do this particular video is for those that maybe already have an oscilloscope and do not want to buy an analog discovery. I'd like to give them a chance to perform some of these experiments, perhaps build this curve tracer. I've talked about that, and maybe in the future I might actually show how I use a considerably cheaper function generator like this XR2206 board to replace the triangle wave generator. Also, one reason that I'm using this particular board is it has a square wave output that I would like to use to trigger a step generator as well. Not yet designed, maybe never will, but at least it gives me the ability to synchronize a square wave with a triangle wave so that I could produce a step generator and thereby replace the analog discovery, at least as far as the waveform generator. Then, if you watched one of my earlier videos on using a current mirror to replace the sense resistor, one reason I wanted to do it that way is that allows everything to be referenced to ground. And that means that an oscilloscope like this Rigol up here that has all of its grounds connected to the third wire could also be used for the curve tracer. So if you have a two-channel oscilloscope that you can use in an XY mode, two or more channels, but at least two channels that can be used XY, which really means almost all oscilloscopes, even oscilloscopes made back in the 60s and 70s had XY modes. Then you can do things like the curve tracer. Another reason that I am going in this direction is I noticed when the new version of waveforms came up, I went to their website to download it, and my memory may be wrong, but previously you used to be able to download their software, and I certainly have downloaded enough copies and bought enough equipment from Digilant that I'm registered for their newsletters and all kinds of other things. But apparently somebody at Digilant has decided that they want to own your profile. So they're now requiring that you provide a bunch of this information, and it says by submitting this you're agreeing to allow them to send you emails. Of course, they say we hate spam as much as anybody, but they don't promise not to send it, nor do they promise that they won't at some point in the future decide to sell it to somebody else and do so by changing their policy if they have one against it, for which you are agreeing that if they change their policy, then they can do whatever they want, even though at the time you downloaded the software, you didn't agree to this. It's one of these things that unfortunately is happening all over today. I was frankly disappointed when I saw that Digilant has gone the route of Facebook and basically feels like they own their customers rather than serving them. But that is the way it is. So I'm going to try to de-emphasize the use of the analog discovery and the other waveforms products in the future, in part just because I frankly just don't think that people should be required to give up their privacy, even though Digilant already has my email address and other things. They send me email from time to time. But at any rate, if you were wondering, well, why in the world is he still headed to things like this when he has a perfectly good analog discovery? I actually have two of them plus a digital discovery. That's the answer, is I think it may be time for us to consider using some other equipment. And for those who couldn't afford an analog discovery, this may be an opportunity for you to do some of the experiments I've done without having to buy one. So let's look at the XR2206. Here is the data sheet for the XR2206. Now, this is actually the XR data sheet, and you'll see that it consists of a 16-pin chip. You can get it in DIP, and you can also get it in SOIC. The one I'm using is a PDIP. So I would suggest, for those of you that are considering buying or working with this chip, that you download this application note. This is AN14. Back off a little so you can see that a little better. Entitled A High Quality Function Generator System Using the XR2206. Now, what this actually describes is the entire circuit, and most of the XR2206 DIY kits that you find out there are based on this application note. One reason that I suggest that is what you'll find is not only does it have a lot of information about the chip itself, but also you can download this data sheet, which is the original data sheet, and it contains much more information than the little instruction sheet that came with the board that I built. This is typical of what you get. Some of the kits don't even have this. It basically has a list of the parts, a little bit of a diagram of where everything goes, and then very abbreviated operating instructions and a schematic. The XR2206, though, does have some interesting and in some cases frustrating characteristics that you might find yourself wondering why it performs in a particular way. The nice thing about this particular data sheet is it does talk a lot about things like the applications, the difference between a sine wave generator and the fact that depending on how some of these resistors are adjusted, the relative linearity of the sine wave and so on. I only tell you that because if you know it's out there, you can go find it, and it will reduce a lot of frustration in trying to get one of these boards to work. Now, mine worked the first time. I'm usually pretty careful at soldering and at pre-checking and cleaning the board and doing all the usual steps that you should take when you build a DIY kit. And normally my projects work the first time, assuming that it was a good system to begin with. I will, however, caution you to be careful about the 2206s that you buy. I'm just trying to get the scope probe out from under there, because some of the chips that you buy online are really not made by XR, and they aren't really 2206s. They are clones that work. Some of them work a little bit, some of them don't work at all. So just beware. I would buy this from a relatively reputable dealer if you're going to replace your function generator or use this as a function generator. It's not a great function generator, but it is a very low priced one. So I will probably be trying to use this to replace the analog discovery in the curve tracer applications that I've worked on recently, but I can't guarantee that I will do that. If that doesn't work out or I lose interest, I probably won't ever produce a video on that. But I did want everyone to know that these sorts of things are available for those who don't want to go out and buy an expensive function generator and maybe already have an oscilloscope, but would like to do things like the curve tracer project. So once again, as I always say, I hope you'll look forward to some other things in the future. I hope you definitely enjoyed at least seeing this very low-priced function generator at work, and perhaps something to come in the future about using this in a curve tracer application. In the meantime, I hope you have a nice day.